folks, welcome back to Rule of Thumb. Today I'm bringing you along for another Pantry Chat, and this was inspired by a couple comments that I got from you guys regarding different books that might be helpful for people. And I thought that actually brings up a really interesting topic. So today we're going to talk about stocking up on knowledge. So, the recent circumstances that we've all been dealing with brought up an interesting happenstance in the fact that libraries were at least where I live, here in Ohio, were one of the first things to close. So the idea of being able to run down to the library to check out a book, to learn how to do something, all of a sudden became not an option. And just like many other things, at the time when you went online to buy something, the price had doubled, quadrupled, whatever. I mean, there were books that were, $10 or $15 books that were now hundreds of dollars. Which brings up another point. I've had a few comments on, most specifically the video that I did on the Thrifty Cooking for Wartime. The book is not in print anymore. So when you go to search for the book, I did put a link on there that links you to Amazon. It's some ridiculous price on Amazon, like $600 or something. I put the link in there when there was still a copy available. Sometimes when you click on these links, there are no more copies available, or the demand is so high that the price is ridiculous. So you're going to have to do your research. You're going to have to look for sources to find books. I'm going to try and put as many links as I can below for the books that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to go through a mass of books with you today. These are just ideas. They're options. This is not a definitive list of books that you need. I'm just giving you guys some ideas. Because depending on the circumstance, and what we've talked about up until this point is that being prepared can mean being prepared for anything, whether it be a pandemic, whether it be losing a job, whether it be just having a tight couple months, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, you name it. Being prepared can mean being prepared for a lot of different things. Now, depending on the situation, some of the things that you're going to need to know will be more relevant than others. Some of these things may never be relevant to you, but I'm just throwing out some ideas. So, that having been said, we're going to talk about some books, talk about why I think that they're a good idea, or what inspired me to think they're a good idea. Many of you who have watched my channel for a while know I have a very extensive library of cookbooks and other books. Josh and I are both pretty avid readers. We, many years ago, early on in our relationship, realized that we were collecting books at an alarming rate to the point that the books were starting to overtake our lives. So we both kind of said, okay, let's decide what category of books is most important to us, to have physical books, and then we'll try and source the other books in other ways, which is something else I want to talk to you about. So I chose cookbooks, obviously. Josh chose religion, because that's his field. So primarily most of the books that we have in our library throughout our house, because we keep books in most rooms of our house, are cooking, religion, in those general vein. As far as other ways to source books, there are things like audiobook, there is Kindle, there is Amazon books. And a lot of those you can get some free books, you can get previews of books, those types of things. And the other option is most public libraries. I'm not going to say all because obviously I can't speak for the whole country, but most public libraries that we belong to have an option for you to get books online. Um, Sometimes you have to download an app to do it. Sometimes the library has their own, but it gives you the option to go on and get the book electronically. And in some cases, depending on what the application is, you can print from that application, or if you're reading it on your phone, you can take a screenshot and print out the screenshot. So there's all kinds of different ways to get information. That having been said, if you're stocking up your pantry and you're preparing, your foodstuffs, along with paper products, along with pet supplies, along with medications, all the things that we've talked about up until this point, it may, be in your interest to also put a few books in your pantry. With that in mind, I'm going to show you some books. Some of these are going to be easier to get than others. Some of these you may not even be able to get unless you happen to find them. A lot of these books are books that I've gotten at estate sales. I rarely buy brand new books unless it's something I really, really, really want. I tend to just wait until I can find it, until I can come across it. So some of these might require you to just do that. Be looking in alternative places until you come across it. So, let's start with probably what I think will be one of the harder ones to find. I did see that there is a single copy of this on Amazon, but there might be other sources, but this will be a tougher find. And that is this 2-volume set. Okay, this is the Meta Givens Encyclopedia of Cooking, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And this, to me, is just a really good compendium of cooking, as well as some other kind of, there is like preserves and pickles and, other useful information in here. This is just a really good old school cookbook. It tells you how to cut up fish and cut up meat and all of those kind of things. Like, just this is true old school. I do have an extra set of these, and what my intention is, I just recently found a set, and my intention is when I reach 10,000 subscribers that this will be the 10,000 subscriber giveaway. So, something to look forward to in the future. So that's the first one that I wanted to talk about. Another one that is going to be a little bit more difficult to find, but I have found numerous copies of this in used bookstores, is this book. Okay, this is the Searchlight Homemaking Guide. There is also a compendium book that I have, the Searchlight Cookbook. But this is a homemaking guide, okay? And, for those of you that don't know what homemaking is, look it up. No, I'm just kidding. Homemaking is really the art and the science of taking care of a home and all the things that go along with it. So this has everything from etiquette, weddings, setting a table, serving meals, menus for all occasions. All of that stuff, is that going to be of value in a crisis situation? Probably not. But when you get down further, there is the sick room, mental health, floors, woodwork, and walls, furnishing the home, buying household equipment, the laundry, destroying household pets. So this really does tell you everything about not only making a home, but taking care of a home and dealing with issues within a home. So, another great book. Okay, this is a book that has been around for a while. This copy that I have is from 1982. The original was 1973. First edition was published in 1973. So this is putting food by. And this is a term that you will still hear a lot of us use. A lot of people that have been doing this for a long time still use that terminology. Putting food by is essentially a generic term for canning, freezing, dehydrating, any way that you can use to preserve food for later use. So this book goes through, is it worth it? Why put by the foods? Canning methods. It goes through all different kinds of canning: fruit, tomatoes, vegetables, meats, seafood, convenience foods. Then it goes through freezing: fruits, vegetables, meats, seafood, convenience foods, eggs, dairy products. Bev over at our Half Acre Homestead just did a video on freezing eggs. I'll link that up here if you guys want to go check that out. Jellies, jams, pickles and relishes, curing, drying, root cellaring, sprouts and other good things. So this is a very useful book of information. The other book that is kind of in the same vein, and this one is from 1973 as well, so this was written at the same time. This is called Stocking Up, which is another kind of generic term for preserving food. So this goes through a lot of the same things: canning and preserving, harvesting and drying herbs and leaves, root cellaring and outdoor storage ideas. Let's see, juicing your harvest, preserving milk, cream, and eggs, churning butter, making cottage cheese, yogurt, and semi-hard cheese, butchering meat, and dressing poultry. This is a valuable skill. Freezing and canning meats, building your own smokehouse and curing meat, harvesting and storing nuts, seeds, and grains, and preserving bread by using natural ingredients. So, good home knowledge. I mean, this is valuable information. Okay. Where do we want to go next? Okay. Heather over at the Needy Homesteader has already talked about this book. Okay. This is called The Prepper's Pantry. This is a relatively new book. This was from 2019. So, this, I will link Heather's channel up here if you want to go check her channel out. I can't imagine any of you guys don't know who Heather at the Needy Homesteader is, but just in case, do yourself a favor. So this is a really useful book with tons of useful knowledge. There is a compendium book to this, Prepper's Canning Guide or something to that effect. The reason why I didn't bring that to show you that is, even though it has some interesting ideas in it, there are, as there is in a lot of canning cookbooks, a number of errors. And it's hard for me to promote a book that has a lot of errors. So that book is great. The other book is good if you're an experienced canner and you know how to spot the mistakes, but I don't recommend it for people that are just getting started. On that subject, if you are just getting started to canning, this is the definitive source for canning. Complete Guide to Home Canning. This is put out by the USDA. This is anything and everything you need to know about the approved methods of canning as per the USDA. Now, if you've been watching my channel, you know that I do things that aren't always necessarily approved by this book. That is my experience. That's my choice. That's my my decision to make for my family. I did have somebody ask about the harvest guard lids, whether or not they were approved by the USDA. The materials for the lids are approved by the USDA, and it follows the guidelines that are approved by the USDA, but there isn't a specific recommendation from the USDA on those lids. Again, do your own research. So there's that book. Okay, now I want to talk about dehydrating. As far as I'm concerned, there really is only one dehydrating book that is necessary for anybody interested in dehydrating. The Ultimate Dehydrator Cookbook by Tammy Gangloff. I believe she also has some videos on YouTube, if I remember correctly. I can't be positive, but I believe she does. Really, honestly, there is nothing you could ask about dehydrating that isn't answered in this book. So, I do have a couple other smaller dehydrating books that I picked up along the way. Honestly, whenever I have a question, this is where I go. So, short and sweet on dehydrating. But dehydrating is a useful skill. It's another way to put food away. So, we've talked about canning. Now we've talked about dehydrating. I don't really have a book specific to freezing, but a couple of these books have sections on freezing. So, that's another method of preserving. Now what I want to talk about is bread making. Okay? Again, I really only need to pull out one book. This is the King Arthur Flour Baker's Companion. I am not an experienced bread maker. I certainly have friends that are far better bakers than I am. But I have the basic skills. And if the situation arose that I needed to bake bread, I could turn to this book and I could produce loaves of bread that would satisfy us, that would serve our needs, and would be delicious and nutritious. So, do I have other bread baking books? Absolutely, because I have a huge library. But again, if you needed one book that covered everything, this is it. So, you got one dehydrator book, one bread baking book, one canning book so far, that are all kind of the coveralls, and everything else that I've shown you is gravy. Now I wanted to talk about gardening. Okay, so I have a few books here that are kind of generic vegetable books, but that I feel like they have a lot of information in them about growing, harvesting, and using vegetables. So the first one is this book. This is the Reader's Digest, The Ultimate Book of Vegetables. And this is a beautiful book. I mean, visually a stunning book. Like, let me just kind of open to see how beautiful the pages are. Beautiful pictures, beautifully written. So this really, I mean, it talks about crop rotation and different ways of growing it in the ground, in raised beds, in wall gardens, keeping your plants healthy. I mean, I can go on and on and on about this book, but that's not what this video is about. So, I am quite possibly the worst gardener ever. I have not just a brown thumb, a black thumb. It is just not in my wheelhouse. And, Josh isn't a whole lot better at it than I am, although he can keep plants alive. So we haven't really focused on getting better at it because it's not something we felt the need to get better at. But if the situation arose where we needed to grow our own food in order to survive, I have these books so that I could do the research necessary to become a better gardener. Okay, so I got that one. This is a bit of an older book, might be a little bit harder to find. This is Garden Ways, Joy of Gardening Cookbook. And this one is interesting because it goes through each vegetable and gives you different ways to use each vegetable. So one of the things that happens to a lot of people, especially when they're new gardeners, is they end up with a crop of vegetables and they don't know what to do with it. That's where that book is helpful, is it kind of gives you a way to use the harvest that you may not know how to use because all of a sudden you're inundated with a lot of one kind of vegetable. The next one is this book, The Vegetable Bible. This one, again, kind of goes through each vegetable, talks about the benefits of it, how to use it. This is purely a book of knowledge on learning about vegetables. So, those are 3 vegetable books, which transitions us into herbs. Okay? So, this book is Herbs for the Home, a definitive source book to growing and using herbs. Okay? And this really does go through a lot of herbs. I mean, some herbs, honestly, that I hadn't even heard of before. And so, let me get to one that I know here. Okay. Maybe. Okay, so here we're on violets. Okay. So, violets, it gives you cultivation, container growing, the medicinal values, the culinary value, other uses for it, pests and diseases. So it goes through all of each herb, all the ways to use it. So I find this very, very interesting. And then kind of in the same vein as that is this book, which is Natural Remedies. Work with nature to protect your body and promote healing. So this one is organized by what you're trying. It's organized by the ailment. So let me see if I can find the section here. So like the first section is acne. So it talks about acne, how you can use home remedies to help that out. Then it goes into allergies and hay fever, anxiety and nervousness, and it goes through all these different things and talks about ways to help them naturally. Now, again, I'm not an expert. I'm not promoting this as the only way to stay healthy. Should always check with your doctor. It's just another alternative. Okay? So, we've talked about canning. We've talked about freezing. We've talked about dehydrating. We've talked about vegetables. We've talked about herbs. We've talked about bread baking. These are all skills that may come into play in a situation where you needed more information than what you currently possess. Right? So, if you put all of the food away, at the end of the day, you still need to know how to cook it, right? So, if you are not a cook, I am not a cook. No, just kidding. If you're not a cook, you're going to need a cookbook. Okay? Nothing beats the Betty Crocker cookbook as far as basic skills. Okay? I have many versions of the Betty Crocker. I give them away as gifts all the time because I truly believe if you are a new cook and you're just learning and you want to know the basics, nothing beats the Betty Crocker cookbook. So to have that on your shelf, to say the very least, it would be helpful. And then one last book I just want to throw in here for fun, just because I found it interesting, is this book. Okay, this is the Victory Cookbook, Nostalgic Food and Facts from 1940 to 1954. So this was written during war times, and the book is written with a nod to being frugal and making food stretch and doing with what you had, which could be a useful skill in and of itself in a time where you are being pressed into a situation where you have to make changes and do things in a different way than what you have done previously. So, I know that was a lot. That was a lot of books all at once. Like I said, I'm going to try and link everything I can below. And again, these are not all, you don't need all of these books. Just because I have all these books doesn't mean you need all these books. These are just some ideas. If I had to say, you know, what would be the books that I would buy, I would do, you know, if I was making like a core collection, right? Like the bare necessities in my eyes, in my, like, if I had to get rid of all my other books and I had to keep the core necessities, it'd be the Betty Crocker, the King Arthur, the Dehydrator Cookbook, the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, and the Ultimate Book of Vegetables. Because that covers everything, you know, it's, well, you know, I take that back. I'm also going to put in, I think maybe I'd put this one in, just because it has a few things that are not in other books. Okay, so we've got baking, dehydrating, canning, gardening, and cooking. You know, I mean, if you can do all of those things, you're well on the way. Now, you know, having a book that kind of talks about herbs and how you can do things naturally certainly would fall shortly behind that. But that having been said, I just wanted to give you guys some ideas. I just wanted to inspire you to think about another item to stock up on, which is stocking up on knowledge and what's available out there and what you can do with your time and space and a little bit of effort. So, that having been said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, come back and see us soon. And as always, I hope you had a